Hello everyone, this is Dr. Zaidi. Welcome to my YouTube channel ZTube. Today we're going to discuss the example of a process costing system using FIFO method. Here Z Corporation manufactures delicious coffee. Z adds all material at the beginning of the manufacturing process. Now this piece of information is important because when you add material can have an impact on your equivalent units. So in this case, all the material is added at the beginning of the process. Now in the beginning working process, we have 40,000 units that are 30% completed. There is a direct material and conversion cost provided, and the number of units that you started during the current period is provided, and how many units you completed during the period, that's also provided. In the ending working process, the cost of material is provided and conversion cost is provided. However, the number of units in the ending working process, which are 70% complete, are not provided, so you have to calculate that. Now we move on to the problem and solve the process costing problem using FIFO method. Okay, so we'll start with the beginning working process inventory. How many units we have in the beginning working process units inventory? We have 40,000 units in our beginning working process. And then how many units we started during the period? We started with 76,000 units as stated in the problem during the period. So the sum of this would be, so we are in C4 and C5. We can either do C4 plus C5, or you can add the add command, which is equals to sum. And then you start with a bracket, and then it's C4 colon C5, and then bracket close. Okay, so we have total units to account for 116,000. Now we come to the part 2, which is the equivalent unit. In the equivalent units, in the beginning working process, the question says the units are 30% complete. So I'll add 30% here. And then the ending work in process suggests that it's 70% completed. So I just put 70% here in the question. All right, so beginning work in process. How many units we have in the beginning work in process? 40,000, as you can see in part 1. And in the number of units started and completed. Now, what is given is completed and transferred out. All right. We don't have how many units we started and completed, but because we are using a FIFO method, so we can figure it out how many units we have started and completed, because first units that we are going to finish from the beginning working process. So the number of units completed and transferred out to finished goods in the question says 82,000. If you finish 82,000 units, you completed 82,000 units. That means 40,000 units are supposed to be from the beginning inventory. If that's the case, how many units you started during the current period and completed is 82,000 minus 40,000, which gives you 42,000 units that you started and completed. And then the ending work in process. The ending work in process you can calculate by having the total units to account for from the first 116,000. So that should go in the units accounted for, which is 116,000. And then you subtract 82,000 from 116,000, or 116,000 minus 42 minus 40 will give you the remaining 34,000 units in the ending work in process inventory. The next, we are going to calculate the units for direct material and conversion cost. So let's start with the direct material. The question suggests that Z Corporation adds all material at the beginning of the process, right? So in the beginning work in process, it says that 30% is completed. So if all the material is added at the beginning of the process, that means you have added all the material in the prior period. What is beginning work in process? Beginning work in process is the ending work in process from the last period. That becomes beginning for this period. So if you started the process during last period and you finished 30%, that means you already added the material, because material is added at the beginning of the process. So in this period, what are you going to add? You're going to add none, gives you 0. All right. Then the number of units started and completed. Well, when you started and completed 42,000 units, so those units that you started, you're going to add all the material. So everything will be added. 100% of the material is added. So 42,000. All right. Then the ending work in process, it says 70% completed. So in 34,000 units, if you added material at the beginning of the process, that means 100% of the material is added. So 100% times 34,000 is 34,000. Completes this. So the equivalent unit for this is going to be, now we are going to use sum commands. So sum of, we are on D9, all right, D9, and then colon D11. D9 through D11, we're going to add that. So we have 76,000 equivalent units. Now we move on to the conversion cost units. So in the conversion cost, it says the beginning work in process is 30% completed. If the beginning work in process is 30% completed, that means you have to work on the remaining 70%, because you haven't worked on the 70% yet. So that means you're going to multiply the column C9, right? So C9 times 70%, which is 0.7. That's what you're going to work during the period, because you already worked on 30%. So that gives you 28,000. How many units you started and completed? All of them, because you started and you completed. So 100%. So 100% of 42,000 will go here. And then the last one is work in process ending, which suggests 70% completed. So 70% completed when? 70% completed during this period. So that means 34,000, which is C11, is 70% completed, or 0.7. Gives you 23,800. Now you sum this. So sum from E9 through E11. And that gives you 93,800. 93,800 are the equivalent unit for conversion cost. Now this completes our part 2. Now we move on to, so this is units part. Now we move on to part 3, which deals with the cost. All right, so the beginning work in process cost for direct material is given at 40,000. The cost added during the period, right? So two things. One is the beginning work in process cost, that's 40,000 is given, and then you added more cost during the period. So how much cost did you add during the period? Is it given? Yes, direct material cost incurred during the period was 90,000. So you added more, 90,000 more during this period, right? So the sum of this will be, that's D17 and 18, gives you 130,000. For conversion cost, 95,000 was the beginning work in process inventory cost. And then the question says you added 157,000 during the period. So you have $157,000 during the period. Now we add together, that's E17 and E18. So we add together, that gives you 252,000. Now we added these costs vertically. Now we're going to add horizontally for beginning work in process, which is D17 plus E17. So the total of the work in process beginning is 135,000. Similarly, we do it for the conversion cost. So for conversion cost, we have D18 plus E18 added together, 247,000, and then we can add this either vertically or horizontally. This should give you the same answer. So we can do either C17 and C18. So C17 plus C18, this gives you 382,000, or you can do D19 and plus E19, that can also give you 382,000. Okay, so that completes part 3 that deals with the total cost to account for. Moving forward, now we are going to calculate the cost per equivalent unit. And now compared to weighted average method, this is different. In the weighted average method, you would use total $130,000 direct material cost and divided by the equivalent unit, and total of 252,000 of conversion cost and divided by the equivalent units. But in FIFO, we assume that the cost you incurred in the prior period should not be included. Only the cost you incurred during this period should be included. So we are going to exclude the cost of the beginning working process. So we are only going to use the cost added during the period, which is 90,000. And then the conversion cost added during the period is 157,000. That's given, and you can also see from number 3, 90,000 and 157,000. Now you divide this by the equivalent unit you calculated in part 2. So for direct material, right here you have 76,000. So you divide this by 76,000. All right, this is the unit. So I need to remove the dollar sign from it. Let me see. This should not be a dollar sign. So let's just make a journal number. Okay. And then this is also a journal number. So let's just remove the sign from here too. A journal number. Okay, for conversion cost, the number of units are 93,800. Now we are going to divide column D21 by column D22. So equal to D21 divided by D22. This will give you the cost per equivalent unit. We do the same thing here. We divide, in this case is E21, and we divide this by E22, and we get $1.67 for conversion cost. Now we start part 5, the cost assignment part. All right. So before we start, let's fill out the information on the left-hand side where it says completed and transferred out unit. That information is given in the question, how many units we completed and transferred out. We completed 82,000 units and we transferred to finished goods inventory. How many units are in the beginning work in process? That's also given. There is 40,000 units in the beginning work in process. If 40,000 is in the beginning work in process, 82,000 are total completed and transferred, and we are using FIFO method. So that means these are the units that we first completed, the 40,000 one. So the remaining would be the started and completed, 82,000 minus 40 is started and completed, which can also be seen in your part 2, how many units you started and completed. Here it says 42,000. So we can fill out this information here. Started and completed units are 42,000. All right. And then the ending work in process, again, you can see here 34,000 units are in your ending work in process. So the ending work in process units are 34,000. Now we can start filling out the information here. So starting with the beginning work in process, in which we have 40,000 units. Now the 40,000 unit cost we already incurred in the prior period. That's the 40,000 unit cost. So the beginning work in process cost for direct material during the prior period was 40,000. And then the beginning work in process cost for the conversion cost, you can see in part 3 here, 40,000 for direct material and 95,000 for conversion was 95,000. So we added that. Now, cost added during the period in the beginning work in process, cost added to beginning work in process in current period. So that comes from your part 2. This is the beginning work in process right here. And this is how many units you worked on during the current period. In conversion, you worked on 28,000. In direct material, you didn't work on any unit because you already added cost in the prior period. So, and you can see here 40,000 is already added. So you're not going to double add here. So then the cost added during the current period would be your column and row D9, cell D9. So you have cell D9 and times your cost per equivalent unit for direct material, which is D23. D23. And that will give you how much cost in the direct material you added, which turns out to be 0, which is true because you didn't add any material in the beginning inventory. All right. And then for conversion cost, so we pick 28,000, which is E9, and then we multiply this by the cost per equivalent unit, which is E23. So that will give you the cost you added in the beginning work in process in your conversion cost, 46,000 during this period, 95,000 in the prior period. So you sum this up, so equals to, this is your D27, D27, yep, plus E27. And then for your conversion cost is D28 plus E28, right? You can also add horizontally if you want, or you can wait and you can add later on. So the total cost here for the beginning work in process inventory is your C27 and C28. C27 plus C28. That's your total cost of beginning work in process inventory. Now, started and completed, how many units you started and completed during the period? So if you look at that, part 2 again, you started and completed 42,000 units. For direct material, 42,000 units for conversion cost. This is in cell D10 and E10. So what we are going to do here, we are going to multiply cell D10 by your cost per equivalent unit, which is D23. We'll get the cost of started and completed units, and then we'll do same thing. Now we're going to do E10 times E23, $67. You will get 70,298 for the conversion cost, that is for started and completed units. Now we add them together. So that's D30 plus E30. Both cells are added. So it's 122,000 cost for number of units started and completed. Now the cost of the ending work in process, again, now you're going to go back and you're going to look at the units in the ending work in process, which is 34,000 for direct material, 23,800 for conversion. So they are on cell D11 and E11. So you're going to multiply D11 times the cost per equivalent unit, which is D23 again, and then E11 times E23. And then you add them together. So now this is D32 plus E32, 80,000. Now you add the total cost to account for. So here we are going to do sum of. So we are starting to add our E27 through all the way to E32. That's 252,000. All right. And then we'll do same thing for our D column. So we have D27 all the way to D32. It gives you 40,000. There's something wrong. Why we missed something? Should be more than that. D27. All right, D27 through D32. That should be more than 40,000. D27 times D plus. So we have D27 and then we have D30 and then we have D32. Oh, I forgot to add the sum part here. No wonder we're getting error. So 130,000. All right. And then the sum of this part here. So because we already added 135 and 46, so we are not going to add that. And let's add this part here, 181,000 plus 120,000. We don't have to add that either. So equals to, this is your D29 and C29 and plus C30. So that's 301,000. And then plus we do, now we'll add 301 and 80. So here we have C31 plus C32. So 382,000. So now interesting part that you need to see whether you did your problem correctly or not is these numbers right here, total cost to account for, should match this, right? So the total cost to account for on part 3, 382,000, is the same as total cost accounted for. These two numbers should match if you have done it correctly. If you can see direct material 130,000 in part 3, the same is 130,000 in part 5. Conversion cost 252,000, same as 252,000. That means this is reconciled. You did it correctly. You can check your equivalent units, also the total units to account it for also with this 116,000 in number 12 is same as in number 6 right here to account for part 1, right? In your cell C12 and in your cell C6 you have 116,000, so they are matching too. So now we completed this problem and I hope you understood it, and if not, I'll be posting more FIFO method problems on my YouTube. Please feel free to review them. Thank you for watching my video. Please subscribe my channel for live updates and other videos.